Tonight was a night where home plate umpires were front and center, and the Ohtani decision is haunting the Angels and probably will for a decade.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. There's my lower third. You can call me Sully. I'm an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now. This is my fifth full season on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're in the second half of the season here. We're going to talk a little bit about, well, the Angels' free fall, some interesting calls behind home plate. I'm going to be playing a little bit of the episode I did with Miller Thomas, where I cut one part of our conversation out, including in this episode. And I think there's an absolute frontrunner in the American League Cy Young race. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, and you can follow us here on YouTube. Please subscribe. If you like the show, let people know. And let's go through the trivia question. I asked the other day, which franchise did Cy Young play the bulk of his wonderful career? Big surprise. It was Craig Brindle, my listener, who I got to bring on to do a little trivia contest with him. Got right. It was the Cleveland Spiders. The Cleveland National League team before they had many they were called the Indians. They were called the Naps at one point. They were almost called the Broncos or the Raiders. Those were some of the other names floated around instead of Indians. And this whole transition to the Guardians would have been a lot smoother if they were called the Raiders or the Broncos. But I digress. He played for a minor league team in Canton. He was from Ohio, played with the Cleveland Spiders for about a decade, and he went to the team that was called the St. Louis Perfectos. They changed their name to the Cardinals, and according to BaseballReference.com, the single greatest website in the history of planet Earth, he jumped. That's a transaction term. Jumped from the St. Louis Cardinals to the Boston Americans in 1901. The foundation of the American League led to a early form of free agency that teams could sign with either the American League or the National League. There was no umbrella of Major League Baseball, and which is one reason why the World Series was basically an olive branch between these two rival leagues. The team in Cleveland folded. The Spiders folded. They became the Cleveland Naps initially, and Cy Young finished his career he played for the Naps for a couple of years. He got released, and he's finished his career with the Boston National League team, which at the time were called the Rustlers. Earlier, they were called the Bean Eaters. They changed their name to the Braves at one point. For a while, they were the Bees. And I think that's actually a cool name. They were the Boston Bees for a while, and then back to the Braves. Interesting piece of trivia. Charlie Check and Jack Ryan are the names of the people who the Red Sox traded Cy Young to Cleveland, and they got back Charlie Check and Jack Ryan. Jack Ryan, I don't know if the character from the Tom Clancy novels was named after the Jack Ryan who played for the Boston Red Sox for one season. But there you go. By the way, if you want to win the Immaculate Grid, which I play every day, if you need someone who played for the Cleveland franchise, the Red Sox franchise, or the Dodger franchise, write down Jack Ryan. I guarantee it will improve your rarity score. Hey, let's just talk about this briefly. The Angels played a game against the San Francisco Giants. The Angels had a lead for most of the game. The Angels got a double and a stolen base from Shohei Ohtani. And the Angels were in control of most of the game until the ninth. And in this game, in Anaheim, suddenly the ninth inning turned into an absolute house of horrors. And the Giants, who were losing 3-2, and they got it was a back and forth game. J.D. Davis got a home run. Ohtani, of course, contributed offensively. Sandoval pitched a very, very good game for the Angels. And then in the ninth, Patrick Bailey hit a go-ahead double for the Giants, and the Giants just piled on. Mark Mathias, I'm sorry, brand new player in there. Thairo Estrada, Blake Sabol. I mean, it's not like it's a murderer's row with the San Francisco Giants, but the Giants took a 3-2 deficit and turned it into a 8-3 blowout. And with that, the Giants took advantage of. There was no Dodger game play today, but more importantly, they currently have the top wild card spot. And I mentioned it's absolute chaos in the wild card situation. The Cubs made it the other day. The Cubs lost today. The Reds won. It goes back and forth. The Marlins have lost 5 games in a row, but are still in it. The Diamondbacks have lost 6 games in a row, but they're still in it. The Padres got clubbed by the Dodgers, but they're still nominally in it. But the Giants won a big game. But with this, lest we forget, I've said this many times, it's never the right time in the year to lose 7 games in a row. It's never the right time to lose a week of games in a row. But it's certainly not the right time when it's after the trade deadline and you've made the decision to go for it, like the Angels did, trading away a quality young pitcher, a quality young catcher to bring in Giolito. Now, I praised them for the move for Giolito because it showed them, okay, they are indeed going for it. But it was, as I said, they needed to sign him or trade him. And they've had him for 6 seasons, and they've never had a winning season despite having Trout and Ohtani. And a couple of those years, they were both healthy. Yes, I know there have been injuries and everything. Every team has injuries, all right? And right now, the Angels went from, hey, they're on the outskirts of the wild card race, and hey, you know what? They're 56, and they were 56 and 51. Made the deal for Giolito. We're only like a game or so out of the wild card, and now they've lost 7 in a row. 7 in a row and sinking like a rock. Do you know they are right now 8 games out of the 3rd wild card spot? You have a generational talent, and you're now it's still early August, and you're more than a week out of the last spot. I'll say it, and there's not much more to say other than thank God we had the World Baseball Classic where we got to see Ohtani and Trout play a meaningful game there. But the Angels' decision to not trade Ohtani is going to go down as one of the biggest front office blunders in the history of baseball. I do not think that's hyperbole. I don't. Also, it's not hyperbole is that home plate umpires announced their presence with authority. The Red Sox, who got just humiliated by Toronto over the weekend, and look, I don't think the Red Sox are in it anymore. I mean, they're nominally in it, but they've been falling like a rock. They had lost 7 of their previous 10 games, and they lost all momentum. In the sweep at home, they went from, hey, we have a chance to tie the team to tie the Blue Jays to, oh my God, we're so far out of it. By the way, I was a guest on 2 different podcasts over the weekend. The Sox Addicts podcast, hosted by my friend Melissa Monto. We talked about the Red Sox there. I also was a guest on Baseball PhD, as I am every once in a while, and we talked about the trade deadline there. So I've been guesting on some other shows as well, if you want to continue to look for me on the podcast universe. But the Red Sox are trying to at least stay in the race or at least finish the year with a winning season. And if they had lost this first game to the freaking Royals, that would have just been an absolute nightmare. And Bello pitched well. The bullpen blew his lead. He pitched in the 7th. The bullpen blew his lead. And there was, in the 9th inning with 2 outs and 2 strikes, and it was a 3-2 count, the home plate ump, Nick Marley, is that who it was? Just gave the Red Sox an absolute gift. It should have been a called 3rd strike to send the game into extra innings. Instead, it was called a ball, and the bases were loaded. Matt Quattaro, I think I'm pronouncing his name correct. Forgive me, I don't talk about the Royals that much on this show. Got ejected for basically saying what gives. It was even the Red Sox announcers were going, "Oh yikes! Yeah, this went the Red Sox way." And then Reyes came up and hit a fly ball to left field, and it was clear it was going to at least hit the wall. If it stayed fair, it was going to hit the wall and be a game ender. It wound up hitting the foul pole, so it became a walk-off grand slam. The Red Sox won the game 6-2. An absolute gift from the home plate umpire. You should never know who the home plate umpire is. But the home plate umpire also, so that was a essential win for the Red Sox. If they have any hope of winning, to finally get the bad taste in the mouth out of the sweep, and try to win this series, try to sweep the Royals. The Royals are a sweepable team, but in order to sweep, you got to win game 1. The Yankees, who are also on the periphery, they lost. It's funny. It felt like they had a better when they had 3 games against Tampa and 4 against Houston. And it kind of felt like, hey, they held their own, but they didn't really. I mean, they split the 4 games. They went 2-2 against the Astros, and they went 1-2 against Tampa. So they went 3-4 in a 7-game stretch, which is, I mean, okay, they weren't swept, but good Lord, if you're trying to make up ground, you can't say, hey, in this 7-game stretch, we lost 4. Well, guess what? In an 8-game stretch, they lost 5. And they wasted a wonderful performance by Garrett Cole, who his line is deceptive. He's charged with 4 runs in 7 innings, but the bullpen, Canely, pitched poorly, and he allowed the inherited runners to score. So it actually was a better line. He pitched better than his final line showed. Once again, hey, I don't know what's going on with Sean Casey as the new hitting instructor, but another day where the Yankees left runners on base in the teens. They scored 1 run, and they left 13 runners on base in a game that was 2-1 going into the 8th. I mean, this offense is just disastrous at this point, even with the new hitting coach. And when the White Sox rallied in the 8th inning, putting up 3 key runs, there was a call that went against the Yankees in, I believe it was the top of the 8th inning before the White Sox rally, and the Laz Diaz was the umpire. And his strike zone was interesting. And Aaron Boone, who's not going to be fired because he has this job for life now, got a quality argument, just screaming, yelling, getting in his face, and ultimately drew a line in the sand, in the line in the dirt, where the called 3rd strike was way off the plate, and pantomimed doing an impersonation of Laz Diaz, which I have to confess I thought was pretty funny. I thought that was I got a good laugh out of that. Boone's not doing a great job. The new hitting coach is doing a terrible job, or there's nothing to be done. And this was a game when Cole pitches, Yankees have to win those games, and they didn't. And with that, the Yankees are falling. The Red Sox are really out of it. The Angels are really out of it. I'm going to stop talking about some of those teams pretty soon because they're on the periphery, and there are other teams. The American League is starting to look like it's pretty set. The National League, that could all be set. That could all be scattered around with a winning streak here or a winning streak there. Well, look, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to play a little bit of my conversation with Miller Thomas that we did for yesterday's show that was deleted for time, but I want to include in this episode. You know, we're living in some pretty stressful times. And sometimes, you know what, it's not always easy to know what to do or know the best route to take in your life. And when you feel uncertain about some things, you know what? You sometimes need help finding the path to go on your life. You know, we've all had stressful things. I've had issues in my family, issues with my health. It's been, let's face it, it's been a weird decade. A lot of us are on edge. And therapy could sometimes be the right thing to do. It could be a positive thing in your life. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, and it's designed for your convenience. It's flexible, and it's suited for your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB. Hey, I'm going to play a little snippet that was cut out of Sunday's episode. I'm talking with Miller Thomas about the big fight between Cleveland and the Chicago White Sox. All right, as promised, I'm here with Miller Thomas. We were going a little over on the other show, and we want to just quickly talk about the big fight that happened between essentially two non-contenders in the American League Central. I mean, the Cleveland Guardians were they're nominally contenders, but they've been losing a bunch. And Minnesota, by the way, Minnesota's dropped a bunch recently too, but not as much as Cleveland has been. Tell me your thoughts about the big fight between Tim Anderson and Jose Ramirez, who basically became Clubber Lang in Rocky III.
Yeah, I both loved and hated this fight because, Sully, I do love a classic fight in sports. When you get the Jason Varitek versus Alan Rodriguez, or the Pedro Martinez versus whoever that guy, that old
Don Zimmer.
Couldn't think of his name when you just tossed him to the ground. I love a good baseball fight. And you got a great one here this past weekend. I don't even know what started this fight, to be honest, because Jose Ramirez was sliding into second base. All of a sudden, he had words for Tim Anderson, and they quite literally dropped their gloves, squared up, and started throwing punches. The announcers were immaculate in this fight. Down goes Anderson. Down goes Anderson. Great call by the announcer there. I don't even remember which broadcast it was for, but great fight this weekend. Now, the downside of it is you do have some old managers, the Tito Francona. He's had some health scares in the past. He's out there yelling. He's trying to get in a fight. I don't want to see that for him. He's an old man. He needs to sit down. Love Tito. He gets ejected. Other manager gets ejected. And then also Eloy Jimenez, who just got back into the lineup this weekend. There's a clip of him where he's like coming out of some man pile and he's like limping. He's grabbing his leg. And it's like, this man is perpetually hurt. He just got back from injury. And all of a sudden he's in this brawl and he's like hurting himself again. He did finish the game, so it doesn't seem like he had a setback, but that's not something you want to see. You don't want to see your best players getting hurt, especially from a guy that's already injury prone. So I love it and I hate it because I love seeing a good fight, but the reality is players do get hurt from this, and we're going to see some suspensions come down as well. So I got mixed feelings, but at the end of the day, love a good baseball fight and a good sport fight overall.
I mean, look, I'm not a big fan of fights in baseball. I really not. I'd rather win a game. Yeah. I've never, even like Pedro's my favorite player, and getting involved in that brawl, you know, the Rodriguez Varitek fight was always like, hey, I'm much more, you know, I feel badly for Bill Miller, who hit a walk-off 3-run homer off of Mariano Rivera in that game. And all anyone remembers is the fight between Varitek and Rodriguez. You know, I mean, it's, you know, look at it. The one thing was, as a fight, and this is just as the gorilla in me, the simian, the not quite evolved dude in me. As a fight, it was an actual fight. It wasn't just the whole hold me back. No, you hold me back. Hold me back. You hold me back. It was no, that was a fight. And so that was interesting. But I'm if someone got hurt, I mean, especially if someone got hurt on Cleveland's side and they're fighting for their lives. I mean, I mentioned they're 4 games out of the American League Central, but they're chasing the Twins. They're not chasing the 1927 Yankees here. They're chasing a team that could very easily go on a slide. And if someone gotten hurt or some big setback or someone got suspended, and suspensions are being handed out, and you're looking and you go through a bunch of games shorthanded, I can't help but think that's just stupid with a capital stupid.
Yeah, for me, it definitely depends on the context. If it was like the D-backs right now, like if Corbin Carroll went out there and started throwing punches, I'm like, that's my franchise star. I don't want him anywhere near a fight. I don't want him getting suspended as well when we're like 1 game back of a wild card race. Like that would be an all-time disaster for the D-backs. But if you told me it was the 2021 D-backs who only won 54 games and it was Luke Weaver out there throwing punches, then I'm like, okay, yeah, let's see it, Luke Weaver. I want to see you throw some haymakers and connect on a couple dudes. So I think context really matters when it comes to some of these fights.
It's kind of like when the Celtics in the 80s had Greg Kite, and Greg Kite's main job was to get in fights. And if someone got tossed or suspended, it wouldn't be Bird or Parrish or McHale or DJ. And the Lakers had Kurt Rambis kind of in that same role. Okay, they're not ejecting Worthy or Magic or Kareem. We're ejecting Rambis and we're ejecting Kite. Those are really kind of the bruisers, the Hanson brothers of this team. But I don't know. I'm not a big fight guy, but we'd be remiss if we didn't bring it up. And it's also tempers are flaring. The Cleveland Guardians thought this was their division to lose, and the White Sox. Lest we forget, and this is the point I keep making to Baltimore for not going all in when the opportunity is there. As recently as 2021, the White Sox looked like they were going to win the American League Central in perpetuity, or at least for the next few years. And the thought was, okay, they made the playoffs in the COVID year. They won the division easily in 2021. And now there's going to be a window of opportunity between 2022 and like 2024, where one of those years probably everything will click and they could go to the World Series with that core of players like Anderson and Eloy Jimenez and Moncada and Luis Robert Jr. and Jose Abreu. And this whole core was going to bring home a championship to the South Side. And instead, the thing got blown up. And so, tempers are high, especially when going like, we can't contend with the Twins barely above 500. We're not contenders. And, tensions run high.
Yeah,
when that happens.
And they still had so much talent this year, but they've had guys like Tim Anderson underperform, the Lance Lynn's. Like, it's just been such a weird last few seasons with the Chicago White Sox team because the Luis Roberts or the Eloys haven't been healthy, and then they're like healthy this year, but then you got the Cisa struggling and the Lynn struggling. So it's like they're just never been good vibes around that Chicago White Sox situation, and you hate to see it. And the Cleveland Guardians, like, we talk about the race, we talk about all these teams that are like fighting for the playoffs, like, their only path to making it to the postseason is getting the division title.
Yeah.
And a fight like this weekend where a guy like Jose Ramirez is probably going to be suspended, just a few
their
games.
Their
best player, like that's going to desperately obliterate your chances of making it to the postseason. So for a team like Cleveland, like this really, really hurts. But if you're the Chicago White Sox, with everything they've gone through the last few years, with all the ups and downs, I think a fight was really good. I think they need to relieve some stress, get some nerves out their system, just land a few haymakers, buddy. It was fight night all weekend. Jake Paul, Nate Diaz, you had this going on. Really great weekend. Saw some really good haymakers on Twitter. I'm very happy.
All right, you're Miller Thomas. Thanks for dropping by another episode of Locked On MLB. Where can people follow you?
At Creator Thomas 24 from my personal account. Look up Locked On Diamondbacks both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle, streaming on all podcasting platforms, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube.
I love how you were going right. If you watch your video, your eyes were closed and you were doing a little. It was
in a trance.
I was about to say it was soulful. I loved it.
Yeah,
I love it. Thanks for coming. By the way, thanks for coming back for today's show. I know it was a lot for you to come back.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. I had to cut out, I got the same shirt on, Sully. That's how much work I put in on this.
I know. Good job, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is the perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can make sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check mark so you know the part will fit, or your money back. Just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop at eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Motor Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only, and exclusions apply. I mentioned Gerrit Cole in segment 1. He's probably going to win the Cy Young Award. Stacey Gotsulias and Steve Granado talked about that on the most recent episode of Locked On Yankees, and I'm really like, wow. I honestly think that he's going to win it, and he's having a very, very good year. I mean, he got the loss tape, but wins and losses are they're not reliable. I mean, he does have 10 wins if you like wins. He has an ERA of 2.75. He does have some of the best if you like the sabermetric stats. He's kind of having one of those years where he's statistically, if you like sophisticated sabermetric stats, well, he leads the league in WAR for pitchers. If you like traditional stats, he leads the league in earned run average and innings pitched. And I put a huge emphasis on pitchers who go deep into games and throw a lot of innings. And that's exactly, you like adjusted ERA plus adjusted pitching wins, base out, run save, all these advanced stats I don't understand. Situation, win saved, base out, win saved. I don't understand any of those stats, but Cole leads all of them and also leads a lot of the traditional stats. And you look at some of the other pitchers, I mean, Bassett's having a fine year. Eovaldi's having a good year, but he's been hurt a little too much. And so, I think Cole is one of the best free agent signings we've had for over the last few decades. I also think Bryce Harper, but I think, the signing of Cole, we get on the Yankee management from time to time. That was a phenomenal signing. It wasn't a stroke of genius. Everyone could see that Gerrit Cole was an outstanding pitcher when he pitched for both the Pirates and for the Astros. But I'm telling you, one thing that I find very interesting about Cole is that he has answered a bunch of his critics who wondered if his success was all due to the sticky tack that he had on his fingers. That once that was going to be illegal, then he would come back to earth. And I think he's pitched better. He's had several very good years for the Yankees. He's had some years where we let up too many home runs, but he's answered the call. The Yankees have an ace. There's very few true aces, and I have my tin hat conspiracy theory that baseball doesn't want true aces because they cost too much. It's easier to do bullpen games and having pitchers only go 5-6 innings. I think pitchers are bigger and stronger than ever, but it costs less to have someone who goes 5 or 6 innings as opposed to a workhorse. But they've got a workhorse, and so I think at this point, Cole has to be the front runner of the American League Cy Young. I'm just going to bounce around the league a little bit. There's this in a game between Toronto and the Guardians. Toronto won the game, and Hicks, who they acquired from St. Louis at the trade deadline, got credited with a save, but don't believe that. That he didn't save the game. Jansen, their catcher, saved the game because in a wild bottom of the ninth inning, when Toronto had a 3-1 lead, but the Guardians loaded the bases, Hicks, to paraphrase Morgan Freeman in the great Clint Eastwood film Unforgiven, was throwing the ball all over creation. And Jansen, at least 3 times, saved a wild pitch. If he didn't stop all these wild pitches, Cleveland would have tied the game without a hit or without an RBI hit. So while Hicks got the save, Hicks better buy Jansen a big steak dinner while they're in Cleveland. The Cubs have been on an absolute rampage, but the Mets cooled them off a little bit, and Pete Alonso drove in 6 runs in their 11-1 victory. Good for the Pirates for getting off the mat, and their chances of playing 500 ball are slipping away. But they beat the Braves, who are, I think, the best team in baseball. Connor Joe got a big home run in that game. Man, the Marlins are sinking like an absolute rock. They took an early 1-0 lead, but then they wound up losing the game to Cincinnati, who's holding on for dear life on their playoff spot. You know, the Twins are now 6 games above 500. For a bunch of days, they were hovering around the 500 mark. It was this embarrassing, oh my God, is the AL Central going to have a sub-500 team win the division? Well, it certainly doesn't look that way. And things are starting to click for the Twins. I'll tell you why. Lopez pitched well for them. They got a big 3-run home run by Ryan Jeffers. The Twins were up. Yeah, they're playing the Tigers, but yeah, they got to win these games. And the Tigers have some talent. But it was 7-0 after 2. It was 8-0 after 3. And Carlos Correa got a big RBI double and a 3-run home run. Correa's going to have a bad overall year. But if he's healthy, if that team is in October and he's healthy and he's starting to hit, then that's really all you can really ask for. But they'll probably do wonderfully. The Rangers rallied late against the A's. The A's played such sloppy baseball. It's hard to watch. It was hard to watch if you're a Rockies fan to see what the Brewers just absolutely manhandled the Rocks 12-1. Freddie Peralta got the victory in that. Bryce Terang got a big 2-run home run. Sal Frelick got a big home run in that. As my mom would say, it was a lot to not enough. So big series are continuing, and some of the teams that have interest in a wild card spot are going to be gunning for it. The Phillies are a team that is holding on to a wild card spot, want to repeat, want to get back to the World Series. They were rained out on Monday, so they're going to play a doubleheader against the Washington Nationals. Suarez is going to pitch one game. Zach Wheeler is going to pitch the other game. So the Phillies could help solidify their spot in the National League wild card chase. And you know what? If the Yankees have any hope of staying in this race, Schmidt has to win against Toussaint, because if they lose tomorrow and they go play the Chicago White Sox and lose that series, then then the party's over. Let's talk about a trivia question, because the Astros were idle on Monday, but who are the hell are the Astros playing? They're going to be playing the Orioles. That's actually a really interesting series, and not just because they both wear orange uniforms. It's 2 teams that both are realistic pennant winners. If you told me the Astros are going to repeat and take another trip to the American League Championship Series and the World Series, I'd say sure. Same thing for Baltimore. Now, if the Astros, here's your trivia question. If the Astros make it to the ALCS, this would be 7 trips in a row to the ALCS. Nobody else has done 6. This is going to be the greatest ALCS run in the history of the expanded postseason. What team, what franchise? Remember, the League Championship Series began in 1969. Which franchise is the only other American League team to reach the ALCS 5 years in a row? The Astros have done it 6. Who's the only other team to do it 5 years in a row? That is your trivia question going on. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about bad calls, bad decisions, bad punches thrown, and a potential Cy Young winner. This has been the Locked On MLB Podcast for the 8th day of August 2023. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.